Welcome back, friends. For today and the next few episodes, Sarah and I are going to take up a delightful man born many, many years ago and was reintroduced into I have never encountered him before Sarah and I came up with this talk. And I was doing some perusal for spiritual masterpieces, for lack of perhaps a better word. And the book we'll take up here is The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection. And perhaps since we're at the very beginning of Lent, it could be very much considered a Lenten suggestion.
Right.
Had you heard of Brother Lawrence before all of this, Sarah?
No, I never had. And it's interesting because I was reading in the, he's French, so I decided that I was going to try and plow my way through it in French. I didn't make it all the way through, but it's very, very good. But it's interesting because in the little copy that I had found, it said that he was well known in England, but for whatever reason, his writing had been lost in France. So he became very well known in the English-speaking countries and less known in France, and has only been sort of being rediscovered there since they found a copy of his book. You know, now it's 100 years, but I mean, when he was writing, he was better known in England than he was in his own country, which I think had something to do with the life that he lived and a desire that he would have had himself. I sort of think that that's a particular grace given to him based upon what we're going to talk about, his method of life, shall we say.
That's correct. That's correct. And I was talking with another very well-read Catholic, certainly very well-read within the mystical and spiritual direction realm. And he too had never heard of Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection. So maybe we can shed a little light on who is this guy and what's it all about. Okay. So there are several translations available. So we might as well go ahead and start talking about that, because they each have somewhat different formats. There is, and this is going to be the one I will lean into the heaviest, though it's not the one I started with. And so maybe that could be some of you all. Maybe y'all have read Brother Lawrence and other translations, and I'm going to put out a little carrot to you to say maybe a critical edition is going to be better suited for your needs. This is with the not the International Institute, the Institute of Carmelite Studies, and I've recommended them many times in the past, and it certainly bears repeating. Then we have this fellow, the 1896 translation. Of course, this is, of course, not 1896 age, but it has that language of Martino Publishing. Font size is, I'm sure, 8 point. It's very small. It's very tiny. So that's a consideration. And then this last one, this purported Amazon, purported it was in modern English. And it had a 40-day devotion built in. So I thought Lenten practice, that would be a good thing. Written by Alan Vermilye, Vermilye. And I too read this. So I read both of these before I got to the critical edition. And it was because I was reading through this one that I started, my little Catholic feelers started vibrating. And it turns out, I surmise, he is not Catholic. And that actually will become a real problem, like all of chapter 4. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, and I don't want to misquote the wrong letter, but the letter he is using here is nowhere close in translation to the one here with the Carmelites. So then that became, of course, now we're in a big red flag and
Right.
go, oh dear. Our historical setting. So Brother Lawrence lived from 1614 to 1691, right after the Reformation, but before the French Revolution. And also the Catholic so what do we call that time after Reformation, before the Revolution? We can call that the Catholic Reformation time. And so whenever we start talking about Catholic history, these two are always, they always come to the ready, and one leads into the other. Steve, and in fact, Steve Weidenkopf, his epic has Dr. Alan Schreck, and this is Dr. Alan Schreck's book, The Compact History of the Catholic Church. So they really make a very nice little set, if you will, to get a handle real quickly on what's going on in the church and, of course, the world at that time. Alan Schreck notes, there had been other ecumenical councils concerned with the reform of the Catholic Church before the Council of Trent. Trent was different because most of the reforms were actually carried out and put into effect. And that's going to tie straight into the type of Carmelite experience Brother Lawrence will have as he makes his suggestions and rules of life, or his advice and that sort of thing. And that really has to be, we really have to keep a handle on that. And as a result of this historic council, many fruits were evidenced. Okay, do you have something to say as before we keep going on in history?
No, I mean, I think that we'll probably touch on it as we're going through.
Okay. Dr. Schreck notes, again, back to his compact history, another way to look at the Catholic Church after the Reformation, though, is to see it as a church that was purified and renewed and that reflected more clearly the life of Christ. And I think that that little phrase has some profound implications for us right now, my friends. But I don't want to digress. There was a flowering, a new springtime of faith and devotion among many Catholics. Devotion to Mary and the saints was purified and renewed. The Council of Trent encouraged Catholics to receive Holy Communion frequently, at least once a week, and to receive forgiveness of their sins in the sacrament of penance often. Adoration of the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament was encouraged through benediction and 40-hour services. Even though the Mass continued in Latin rather than the language of the people, missals and other devotional aids helped people to pray when they attended Mass. Catholic mysticism, and here we come straight into Father Lawrence, and this is one of the fruits, is Catholic mysticism from this time period, flourished as well. Teresa of Avila, a Carmelite that would have been well read in his convent, mid 1500s, and John of the Cross, 1542 to 1591, both Carmelite mystics and doctors of the church. And just to refresh ourselves, what is the definition of mysticism? It's the direct apprehension of God by the mind. I'll finish out a little bit more of the historical, and then we'll pick up in the next one. So these are the fruits. We had activists, missionaries, and martyrs. And in spite of what has sometimes fell to this order, the Jesuits came in at this time. And we look to their martyrs, and they certainly have pride in Christ, such as Edmund Campion or Isaac Jogues. St. Peter Canisius, or the activists like Vincent de Paul, or the mystics Margaret Mary Alacoque with the Sacred Heart of Jesus. All of this, such a rich, fertile ground, result of the Trent Council and the purification from the Reformation, Catholic Reformation project event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how, how during times of, like, those names become so familiar to us, and yet a name like a Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection becomes lost for a while, and then suddenly finds, new purchase, because what he has to say, I do think is important for now. I mean, really listening to his message, I think it's a really an essential message of how to live spirituality in a world that sort of disavows it, I think, actually.
Yes, I agree. I agree. All right, my friends, the next episode, we will take up some of the biographical information we have on Brother Lawrence. Till then, Fide Sriracha.